It was a typical morning, or so it seemed. The baby's laughter filled the house, and the nanny hummed softly as she prepared breakfast in the kitchen. The K9 dog sat loyally by the door, ever the vigilant protector. The house was warm and full of life, the sunlight streaming through the windows as the family's peaceful morning routine unfolded. But then, without warning, everything changed. The nanny screamed, and the family rushed to her side. The K9 dog, who had been nothing but loyal and protective, had viciously attacked her. The dog's eyes were wild with aggression, a stark contrast to its usual calm demeanor. It was as though something had snapped inside it, an unexplained trigger that caused it to act out. As the nanny was rushed to the hospital, another shocking discovery was made. The baby's food, which had been prepared just a moment ago, was poisoned. Someone had intentionally tainted the food, and the dog had somehow sensed it. It had attacked the nanny, possibly out of protective instinct. The family was left with more questions than answers. Who would poison the baby's food? And what had caused the dog's sudden aggression? As the investigation unfolds, the truth behind this terrifying morning will be revealed. Stay tuned as this story takes a dark, unexpected turn. The scene was chaos. The nanny was rushed to the hospital with bite marks from the K9 dog that had attacked her. The dog, once a trusted companion, was now being held in the garage, growling and pacing nervously. The family was frantic, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The K9 had been their protector for years, guarding the house and their loved ones with loyalty. There had never been a sign of aggression, never a hint that the dog could ever act this way. Yet, here it was, attacking someone the family had trusted for months. The nanny, covered in blood, could barely explain what happened. She said she had been in the kitchen preparing breakfast when the dog, which had been calm just moments before, suddenly lunged at her. It was as if the dog had been triggered by something. It was the first sign that something was terribly wrong. As the nanny was treated, the family began to check on their baby, who had been sitting in its high chair nearby. That's when the real horror set in. The baby's food, which had been prepared just a few minutes earlier, had a strange odor. The parent carefully inspected the food and found something even more disturbing. The baby's meal had been poisoned. The food had been tampered with, and someone had laced it with a toxic substance. The family couldn't believe it. Who could have done such a thing? And why would they want to harm the baby? The nanny had prepared the food, so the family assumed it must have been a mistake on her part. But something didn't add up. The dog's sudden aggression seemed too calculated. The family was left in shock and disbelief. The nanny was already in the hospital, and the baby had narrowly escaped a life-threatening situation. They had no idea who could have poisoned the food, and they had no idea why the dog had attacked the nanny. The attack, it seemed, wasn't random. The dog's behavior was somehow connected to the poisoning. As the family called the authorities, they began to realize that someone inside the house, someone they trusted, might be responsible for the poison. The nanny was a trusted member of their household, but now there was doubt. Could it have been her? Or was there someone else hiding a much darker secret? The investigation had only just begun, but the family was already questioning everything they knew about the people they trusted most. Detectives arrived soon after the authorities were called. The house was immediately sealed off, and the investigation began. The family was questioned, their movements and routines carefully examined. But no one had an immediate answer. Everyone was in shock. The first person to be questioned was the nanny. She had already been treated for her injuries at the hospital. Despite her pain, she insisted that she had no idea why the dog had attacked her. She explained that she had been preparing breakfast when the dog, who had always been calm, suddenly lunged at her. The nanny was as confused as everyone else. There was no apparent reason for the dog to act this way. The police, however, weren't ready to rule out any possibilities. They began to question everyone who had been in the house that morning. The housekeeper, who had been in the home at the time, seemed just as perplexed as the rest of the family. She had heard the commotion but didn't see anything unusual leading up to the attack. The detectives then turned their attention to the kitchen, where the food had been prepared. They carefully examined the area and found that the food had been deliberately poisoned. The detectives suspected that whoever was behind the poisoning had inside knowledge. Only someone familiar with the family's routine could have known exactly when the food would be prepared and who would be serving it to the baby. They immediately began looking at anyone with access to the house, the family, the nanny, and the household staff. But all of them were stunned by the discovery of the poison. No one seemed to know how it had gotten into the food. But what did the dog's attack have to do with all of this? The detectives now theorized that the dog's sudden aggression had been the key to solving this mystery. The dog had attacked the nanny because it sensed the poison. Dogs are known to have keen senses and protective instincts, and it seemed that the dog had detected the danger before anyone else. The police turned their focus to the family's relationships. Was there someone with a motive for poisoning the baby's food? The family had no known enemies, but the detectives weren't ruling anything out. The deeper they dug, the more complicated the case became. As the investigation progressed, more unsettling details emerged. The family had always been private, and there were no obvious suspects. But the detectives began to dig deeper into the family's background. It wasn't long before they uncovered a shocking secret. The nanny had been involved in an affair with one of the family's close friends. The affair, which had been kept hidden from the family, had ended bitterly. The friend, heartbroken and angry, had been harboring feelings of resentment toward the family for months. This revelation gave the detectives a possible motive. The friend, feeling betrayed and hurt by the nanny's involvement with the family, might have been seeking revenge. The detectives began to investigate the friend more closely. They discovered that this person had known the family's routines intimately, including when the baby would be fed. This friend had access to the house and could easily have poisoned the baby's food without raising suspicion. The motive became clearer. The friend wanted to hurt the family, but instead of directly attacking them, they had chosen the baby as a target. By poisoning the baby's food, the friend believed they could cause the family pain and suffering. The dog's protective behavior, which had saved the baby, was an unintended consequence of the friend's plot, but it didn't end there. The more the detectives uncovered, the more disturbing the situation became. The friend, consumed by jealousy and anger, had been orchestrating the entire plan from behind the scenes. The nanny, who had been a victim of manipulation, had no idea she was part of the scheme. The dog, sensing the poison, had acted out of its protective instincts. The friend had underestimated the canine's loyalty and misunderstood the dog's role. The attack on the nanny had been a tragic side effect of the dog trying to protect the baby from harm. The investigation reached its dramatic conclusion when the person responsible for the poisoning confessed. It was the family's close friend, the one who had been hurt by the end of the affair with the nanny. The friend, consumed by anger and jealousy, had plotted the poisoning to get revenge on the family. The confession was chilling. The friend had carefully planned the attack, knowing the family's routine and when the nanny would be preparing the food. The poison had been expertly laced into the baby's meal. The friend had hoped to harm the child, but the dog's protective instincts had thwarted the plan. The K9 dog, acting out of its natural instinct to protect, had attacked the nanny, but the dog had only done what it thought was necessary to save the baby. It had detected the poison and had reacted accordingly. The family was left in shock. They had trusted this person, welcomed them into their home, and never once suspected that they would do something so horrific. The friend's betrayal was not only painful, but almost cost the baby its life. The nanny, despite being manipulated into the situation, had been caught in the crossfire of the friend's plot. She had never intended for the family to suffer, but she was now left to deal with the fallout from the betrayal. The friend was arrested and charged with attempted murder. The family was devastated by the betrayal, but the K9 dog had saved the baby's life. In the end, the family learned that sometimes the ones closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most.